I would even go as far to say that I haven't always realized even just the importance of being this intentional. But through the years and through my, countless transitions, whether through work or location, I've come to really realize that if I don't start paying attention to why I'm doing what I'm doing or what I actually want, then life is just going to unfold for me, right? Like nothing's going to wait for you to make your decision. Nothing's going to wait for you to, if you're very indecisive, it's not going to unfold in the way that you might want or you might anticipate. Like you've got to actually make that decision and make that call beforehand in order for things to work in your favor. And it's really interesting because I've heard something recently that it took me aback. And I think for a lot of people, this is the case, but how many times do you hear people say, oh, it just didn't go as I expected. It just didn't work out as I expected it to. But if you trace back, there was no expectation, right? Like they didn't, and this has been the case for me in the past, absolutely, is that they didn't take the time to lay out, what do I want it to look like? How do I expect things to work? And if you don't do that, it's just going to unfold the way that everyone else expects it to. And then you're going to end up living from a place of reaction.
I'm Autumn Bensett, founder of the Bossy Babe brand, fitness coach, and serial entrepreneur turned intuitive life and business coach. The Wealthy Babe podcast is for the ambitious, courageous, and spiritually charged up woman in network marketing, craving wealth not only in her bank account, but in every aspect of her life. Get plugged in here each week for authentic and unfiltered conversations from myself and industry leaders who are going to support you and give you all the juicy behind the scenes and real talk around business, spirituality, strong points of view, and doing shit differently. This is a safe space to come undone, be heard, and be given permission to rewrite your own damn rules. So here we go. What an honor, Melissa, to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much, Autumn. It's great to chat with you. I'm excited.
I'm really excited to have this conversation. I'm just going to introduce you guys to her super quick in case you don't know much about Melissa and it's the first time that you are being introduced to her and listening to her story. We'll get so much more into this in the podcast as we go. So this is just a super quick, brief bio, kind of running down who it is that she is. So Melissa's a mindfulness teacher and a productivity coach specializing in stress reduction, mental wellness, and personal fulfillment with a diverse background in social work, productivity strategy, and holistic health. Melissa has helped thousands of clients reclaim their time and energy so they can spend their most precious resources on what really matters to them. What a beautiful purpose and calling here on earth. I'm just so grateful that we get to have this conversation today.
Oh, that's lovely. I think that these are things that a lot of people value really highly, and it's great to put, a specific structure around it, because when we hear things like, oh yes, my time and my energy are precious resources, sometimes for some people, hopefully this is the case, a little light bulb goes off, and it's like, yeah, I really need to start looking at my time and my energy like precious resources, because oftentimes that switches the way that, we treat ourselves, we treat our time, we treat our energy. So
yeah, I completely agree. I think that we as humans, I see this a lot, especially as an entrepreneur. There's we value money so highly. I love talking about money, and everyone views money as like this commodity, but then people don't really think about the resource of your time and energy and what that's also costing you when you're not allowing yourself to relieve some of that pressure, relieve some of that stress that's going on, where you're utilizing so much of your energy and you're using so much of your time. And anyway, yeah, this is a huge thing that you're speaking on, and helping bring awareness to these are resources that need to be valued, need to be cared about, need to be focused on, need to be a priority, because they do. It's an amplifier, right? It's like money. Money's an amplifier. So everything amplifies where you're already at. So anyways, roundabout, I'm digressing. I'm just like, yes. This is so good. And I love that you're here again for this purpose, and you're here to do this work in this world, because there's a lot of, part of what I do, and I do teach on some strategy pieces of things, but being able to also manage your time and manage your energy is a huge support in your foundation that builds a sustainable life and a wealthy life and an abundant life. So it's needed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll dive into what that looks like specifically, I'm sure, as we go. But
yeah, we totally will. Okay. So for the person who is like wondering, okay, how did you get here, Melissa? What sparked this desire and this purpose and this passion into what it is today?
That is a jumble of answers. And I think that's usually the case, right? Like the journey to get to where you are is messy, the messy middle. And I've really come to embrace that. So I'll share a bit of what that's looked like sort of in brief. And before I do, I'll just preface, because my journey has involved a lot of hopping around different locations, different areas of work, different explorations and sort of life lessons. When I did a website redesign back in February of this year, 2019, I included on my about page basically like a year by year breakdown of what my journey has looked like. So if I'm speaking too fast, or you're listening to this podcast while you're commuting and it's like, wait, what did you just say? There is a space where you can check that out as well, which is just on my website, and we'll get into that. But for now, from the very beginning, I think it's important to recognize the fact that I'm the only child of a single mother who is a clinical psychologist. And so learning about what makes people tick I would say it's always been part of my life. And it's always been a really of high value and high interest in my family and to me personally. And so that upbringing, by the time I was 16 and 17, I remember all the cool guys in high school saving up and buying cars. And I was saving up. I was working and saving up to travel the world. Like, I went to South Africa. I was just like, how do people live their lives? How can I live my life more intentionally? Like, just really unpacking big questions. And so that's always been, I think, a part of who I am, and really me at my core and my essence. And so that's guided me to, once I graduated high school, I went straight into university. I started in psychology, kind of following in my mom's footsteps, but just I thought that, okay, that was the way to learn how to really help people, was through psychology, was through that avenue of work. The idea of entrepreneurship to me was so foreign, and so I just had no idea what that would even consist of. And I was in the realm of helping people was on one side of the spectrum and business was on the other. There wasn't much room for that intersection. So my education slowly shifted into more social work, more of the bigger picture stuff. And in 2014, I got my degree in that. And when I got that degree, once I finished my university education, I was actually in South Africa at the time, completing my final internship. And I remember sitting at my computer on the balcony of the place that I was staying, looking out over the city, over Table Mountain, just a stunning city, and thinking, I don't think I want to do this. I don't think I want to be a social worker. Actually, that's not true. I was saying, I certainly don't want to be a social worker. This isn't for me. Let's be real. I was just like, nope. And so I attributed it then to the fact that, I hadn't really tried much else. So I sat at that balcony for 3 days and I just wrote. I wrote on my computer of all the things that, there were no real guidelines or parameters. I just wrote what I was interested in, how I was feeling, how I envisioned helping people, what my journey has looked like so far. And I realized I'm in love with writing. And I just haven't given myself the space to do that because I've been writing papers and reading textbooks and, dedicating my life to studies. So fast forward, the next few years from 2015 through 2017, I went back home. I'm from the prairies in Canada, just like you, Autumn. And So
Where are you? Because you're in BC, right?
I'm in BC now. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Since 2015.
So were you from Saskatchewan?
Yeah.
Really? Where in Saskatchewan?
Regina.
No!
Yeah. I know. Is that wild? I saw
This
that.
is wild. What is happening right now?
No, I can't believe. I'm sure we must have run into each other, but just I was on a totally different wavelength back then. You know, I was like full throttle work and school, and that was it.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful how this is like coming really full circle in this part of like your journey, and how we were both like I mean, I still live there, but like live here, but to know that, because how old are you?
27.
Oh my God. Okay. So this is like so personal. I'm like, so what school did you go to?
Yeah, right.
But this is so interesting because we're the same age, and to think that we've been probably crossed paths at some point in our lives, potentially. This is just, anyways, I'm digressing again.
No, it's great. I mean, isn't it so funny? I was thinking that today because I remember seeing that on your Facebook profile. I was like, no shit. Yeah.
Yes, it's this is crazy, but this is so beautiful, you guys. Like, this is the power of social media and connection. Like, our souls have somehow found each other, and they didn't find each other knowingly when we were both in the same city. But now that we're like across how many provinces here in Canada, like now our souls are connecting via Zoom on a podcast interview.
Gotta love the way that life unfolds.
I love it.
Yeah. So I came back to the prairies, and I was just like, I don't really want to use this degree. I don't envision helping people sort of in this framework. And so I pretty much immediately flew to the Dominican Republic and got a job working for a travel company. I promise I'll get to, what I'm actually
No, this is amazing. I think everybody, I love hearing it because it all plays a part in your journey. I'm the same way with my story. I swear the other person on the other end is like, any day.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it really does. It all adds to, the experience, and it all leads to where I am now and where we are now. So,
100%.
I thought then, I was a big world traveler back then. I made sure to incorporate traveling into my studies and just made that a priority. And so once I got this job working for a travel company, and it was sort of like, we'll pay your flight, we'll pay your rent, you just come and work for us. I was like, I've hit the jackpot. This is what it's about. I'm going to help people somehow through traveling. And so I got there, I think January 2nd. And by mid-month, I was like, nope, this is so not it for me. And it just goes back to that idea that I wasn't quite fulfilling my potential, and I wasn't helping people. I wasn't serving people in the way that not only that I wanted to, but that I knew that I was capable of. And so a lot of the next few years were sort of trial and error experimentation. And after that trip, after I came back in mid-January of 2015, I immediately just packed up everything and moved to the west coast of Canada, where I am now. I moved to Victoria, to the city, and I was just like, I'm going to try anything and everything I can to just explore different avenues of work, different ways of helping people. And I took on a whole whack of different roles, like some were in community development, some were in one-on-one, more counseling roles. And I also started doing a lot of writing. So I was doing freelance writing for health blogs and for yoga blogs because I got my yoga teacher certificate. And I was just like, I have this idea that I want to serve people. I want to empower people. I want to promote a life of intention and fulfillment. And I was just sort of in exploration mode as to how I could do that in a way that felt really good for me. So in doing that, I ended up connecting with a local entrepreneur there who had built quite a successful company providing productivity strategy. And by some fluke, I think because I had a background where I was, cultivating qualities of empathy, and I was incredibly eager and enthusiastic, he hired me as his operations assistant. And that was still 2015. So I worked for him in that role for a year, doing everything from writing, promoting, helping with events, really learning the world of entrepreneurship, which had been, again, so foreign to me previously. And I was in. Like I was hooked. I thought this feels so good. And how cool that you can work from home, have control, kind of take the reins and create something every day. You're creating something that is helping people in the way that really only you can. I just thought that is like such a beautiful gift and a privilege. And that felt really good just in my heart, in my mind, in my body. And that role ended up evolving into a coaching role because he needed a coach, or he needed, someone to help him with all these clients. And so that evolved into my first taste of coaching. And again, totally hooked. I had a lot of the foundations, with social work, with counseling, lots of the different skills there. And obviously there's differences, but there is a lot of crossover. And so I thought I was already doing this in previous roles. Like when I would counsel people, it was like I would listen, I would talk, and we would create an action plan. That was how I was counseling, not realizing back then that it's like, oh yeah, okay, this is really laying the groundwork for coaching. So in 2015 or 2016, once I started being one of his coaches, I was realizing, okay, there is space for me here. And I'm really enjoying it. Like this feels so aligned. And so I started sort of doing my own teachings and courses and things on the side based on what I was learning in that role, but in a different context, because I was really interested in teaching people practical self-care tips. And that's still very heavily ingrained in what I do now. And it was more so focused on, my friends who are social workers and nurses and teachers who are like just givers, right? From the heart, whole life. And I was like, man, you guys are kind of burning out, and I'm wanting to just share with you what I know. So I started developing workshops and teaching in different capacities there, and just having phone calls with friends. And so a lot of it really did develop organically in that sense. Until, about, I suppose, last year, 2018, when, again, after a number of moves, because I've moved around BC a few times, I was back in Saskatchewan actually a few years ago, and then back out here. So a bit of a whirlwind, just trying to, figure out like what feels good for me at the time. And now that I'm settled where I am now, again, back on the coast, it's evolved in a really organic way, even still. And I think the reason that was because of a tough and an important decision that I made last year in 2018, which was to take 6 months off of pretty much everything. I realized after a big move from the city to where I am now, kind of tucked in the mountains, that there was just a lot of stuff that I was carrying with me from previous roles. I mean, I've done some heavy work, right? I've done like addictions counseling. I've worked in hospitals with people with fairly new diagnoses of cancer and things like that. So I needed some time to fully process everything, like all the stories that I've heard and all of the things that were just that I was still carrying. And so for 6 months, I didn't really work. I didn't have an income. And I did that intentionally just because I wanted to focus on personal healing and sort of realign myself, because I felt this voice inside me say, there's something big is coming. There's a transition on its way, and you don't get to know what it is, but get ready, sort of thing. Like, buckle up, honey, brace yourself, something's coming. And I love those because they're so tough, but they really teach you to trust yourself when you get those messages and you don't know where it's coming from, and you don't know if it's, like, is this me? Is this something else? And so I just thought to myself, okay, I'm going to prepare myself. I'm going to set my life up around me and inside me as if there were this beautiful transformation on its way. So what kind of person do I want to be? What might I want that to look like? Just started unpacking some of those big questions during that 6-month period of just quiet and stillness in my professional life. And last Christmas, actually, so that was December of 2018, my partner went back to England for Christmas. And so I had a couple weeks on my own. And during that time, I was just like, okay, I've done a lot of the personal work. Now, what do I envision giving to other people, right? Coming back to that question of how do I want to serve others in a way that also serves me, in a way that feels really authentic. And I feel like I'm actually tapping into my personal capacity and potential. And I realized from my personal experience through all of these transitions, through all the explorations, the learning, professional and personal, that mindfulness is a huge piece for me and has been such a grounding factor. And the other side is, of course, the productivity piece, because I'd had the experience, I had the expertise, I was really enthusiastic about it. And also just having that awareness of who I am, I would say definitely type A, love order, love organization, love being in control. And I'm very grounded. I'm very, into the aspects of mindfulness that I hadn't really integrated into business beforehand. So during this 2 or 3 week period where I was on my own, just in my house in the middle of winter, where on the West Coast it's pouring rain, you can't do a whole lot. I just thought, I want to bring these two things together because I'm a very intentional person and I'm extremely ambitious. And I know there's people out there who resonate with that combination. And I also know that there's not a lot of conversation around those two things as one, really, right? Like it's sort of not that I had found at that time anyway. And so I thought it's coming from my personal experience, my personal desire, things that I'm learning. And also this seems like a great way to share what I know with other people in the way that, serves me, fulfills my potential, meets my needs, and so on. And so that sort of is the long story as to how I got into, marrying the mindfulness and productivity piece and still doing a whole lot of other things in both of those areas around coaching and workshops. And I just published a book. So things like that are both, specific to either mindfulness or productivity, and also relating to the both of them as sort of an integrated piece. Whew.
Whew is right. No, absolutely. That was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing the depths of your story and so transparently all these different levels that you've been through and where you have been. Something that stood out so much that was so powerful to me is the essence or the reminder or the lesson here that you allowed yourself to try. Yeah. Like you just allowed yourself to try. Like I got chills when I said that because I think we're so I think as a collective, as humans, we're scared to just try. We're scared to allow ourselves to have the move or do the travel or go to the thing, as if that one thing that we do could make or break the rest of our lives. And we don't allow ourselves just to try. And I don't believe in failure, right? I think that's not really possible. Everything is this positive momentum forward. We learn something about ourselves. But I think that was really beautiful that you noted that you tried all of these different things. You went through degrees, you went through, to the end of things to sit there with, in a country that you aren't familiar with, you don't live in, to say, I don't want to do this. I'm claiming I don't want to do this. That takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of willingness to fully be submitted to what it is that you're here to do, and to know it's okay to switch. It's okay to change. It's okay to pivot in your life, in your direction, in your business, or whatever that looks like for you. But it just spoke so much truth to that, because I live and breathe by that too. I'm just try, right? You have to follow those nudges, and I'm going to take it there in a little bit, but following those nudges and your intuition and being able to really assess like when you're in alignment and when you're not in alignment, and allowing yourself that permission to choose. But something that I was curious about, because as you were speaking, I'm like, was she always like this? Like growing up, were you always like really intentional? Because your mom was also like in this work, right? In her own way, in such a deep way. So I can only imagine growing up, being in that environment. Like, were you always really intentional? Did you always find like yourself having a self-care practice growing up? Or was this something that you adapted as you were in your studies and as you were growing and as you kind of evolved through, your growth as a human?
Yeah, I definitely was not always like this. This is something that has been a process of growth and cultivation over the years. I like to think that, as a teenager, I was in a different sphere of asking myself big questions, excuse me, and really sussing out the depths of my intuition. And I don't think that's necessarily the case, although I was still really interested in exploring certain questions that I noticed a lot of my friends had no interest in discussing or exploring. That said, I think that I love that you talked about, just try, give it a shot. What's the worst that can happen? And yes, I do think that that's an incredibly, beneficial way to approach the way that you live. And I also think it's essential, because if you don't take those leaps, then you don't necessarily position yourself for opportunities for that introspection and to build and cultivate intuition and self-trust. And so I definitely wasn't always this intentional. And I would even go as far to say that I haven't always realized even just the importance of being this intentional. But through the years and through my, countless transitions, whether through work or location, I've come to really realize that if I don't start paying attention to why I'm doing what I'm doing or what I actually want, then life is just going to unfold for me, right? Like nothing's going to wait for you to make your decision. Nothing's going to wait for you to, if you're very indecisive, it's not going to unfold in the way that you might want or you might anticipate. Like you've got to actually make that decision and make that call beforehand in order for things to work in your favor. And it's really interesting because I've heard something recently that it took me aback. And I think for a lot of people, this is the case, but how many times do you hear people say, oh, it just didn't go as I expected. It just didn't work out as I expected it to. But if you trace back, there was no expectation, right? Like they didn't, and this has been the case for me in the past, absolutely, is that they didn't take the time to lay out, what do I want it to look like? How do I expect things to work? And if you don't do that, it's just going to unfold the way that everyone else expects it to. And then you're going to end up living from a place of reacting. And I knew from personal experience in doing that, like when I got my degree and I was like, there goes 4 years that I'm not getting back and I don't actually want to do this. Certainly there are things that I've gained from having that experience and that education, but having that realization of, okay, I don't feel the way that I expected to feel in this major accomplishment. So that means going forward, I need to be significantly more intentional and know what decision do I want to make and why, like what's the bigger picture, right? And so even in cultivating that intention for me, it's been, I want to say trial and error, but I've started switching that phrase with just experimentation because I find it a lot softer, right? It's like more fun. You can kind of play with life. Same thing with money. My partner says instead of money, he calls it points. And
fun.
It's so fun, right? It's like, how many points do you need per month, right? And especially when you're just starting, it can take the pressure off significantly. And again, that's a total digression, but just an interesting piece of like, sometimes that intention comes with experimentation and just playing with different things in different ways.
I love the way that you kind of reframed that a little bit and gave everybody that permission. You get to change the name of it too. Like it doesn't have to be trial and error. It can be exploration. It can be experimenting. It can be just trying things out, because, I went to university too, and I spent 4 years in a degree I didn't even get. So I couldn't even say I have it under my belt if something ever went, like that plan B, like if anything ever happened in my life, I could go and use it. I can't even say that because I don't even have it. And there was so much where I had to allow myself that same permission of saying, I didn't lose anything here, but I went into this and I didn't have any expectations. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know why I wanted this. Therefore, it turned out I attracted mess because I went in with mess, and it's all okay, but it served a purpose. So what did I learn here? Who did I become? Where did this lead me to? Where would I be without it? And sometimes those questions and just that introspection, allowing yourself just to sit with that, allows you to feel good and confident in the choices that you made in that time. And it's not like beating yourself up or judging yourself for the decisions you made at some point in your life with the information that you had at that point, because you only know what you know when you make those decisions. So that was a really beautiful piece to say, hey, you can change the verbiage. You don't have to look at it as trial and error. You don't have to look at it as like throwing spaghetti at the wall and nothing sticking. Just like play around. It's exploration. And that's what, as children, we innately were here to do. I mean, I look at Louie all the time, and she's always just like exploring, right? And I'm like, that's more of what we're supposed to do. Yeah. We're just supposed to explore and play.
And that's totally like our natural way of responding to life. Right? Like as frightening as it is for you as a mom when Louie's exploring things by putting them in her mouth, and you're like, no, don't do that. You can swallow it. That's what we do. Right? Like we were born, we grew up just feeling things out literally with our bodies, with our minds, just trying to suss out, what is this? How can I fit into this picture? And we really are conditioned out of that. And with your example with school, and we're just told what it should look like. We're told what the sort of conveyor belt effect of life should look like. And so that's why I really do encourage people to build your own, create your definition in a way that it's relevant to you. I stick to the 3 P's, the 3 P's of whatever it is, usually like an action plan. And for me, and what I teach, it's that it's personal, it's purposeful, and it's practical. And it needs to be personal to you. Like when you build your framework, when you define things for yourself, if it's not personal to you, then it's literally rooted in what you think you should do. It's rooted in the external. It's rooted in what other people are telling you to do. And then you get to the end of the 4-year degree or 10 years and millions of dollars in a business, and you realize, I didn't actually want this. This was never really mine to pursue or to have. And so I think, absolutely, just starting with making things really, really personal, including your language.
I'm just like, this is beautiful. People are like, is that your only response? But truly, that was beautifully said. And I love that tangible breakdown that anybody can take and look and utilize with their goals and their intentions and what it is that they're wanting to accomplish, so they can really see, is this serving me? Is this a desire that I have? Or is this something that I've been told to do, or something that I think I should do, or something that would make somebody else happy or proud of me, right? Externally needing that validation instead of really finding that within ourselves. Because it's the saddest thing, and it breaks my heart. This is crazy that we're going down this path, but I promise we'll get back to the things that I wanted to share too. But it breaks my heart when you see, or that people could be on that path and they might not realize for another 10 or 20 years, and they look back and everything could fall apart. But you have to trust and just know, hey, we can only do our part and healing ourselves and putting that vibration out there, and hopefully being the light for other people, that they can see within themselves what they desire. But it is I'm grateful that I'm out of that pattern, I guess, for myself. But there was totally a time in my life where I was doing the thing that I thought I was supposed to do. And I'm so grateful, thinking about it now, sitting here with you, I'm like, gosh, I'm so grateful that at some moment there was a ping in my soul, or a gut knowing, there was something there that was telling me, listen to this so strongly. Otherwise I couldn't imagine where I'd be in 10 years If not, I'd be in a corporate position, like pissed off and upset and probably in a relationship that I didn't like. So it's just, it's so powerful. Okay. There's this thing that you were talking about when you were saying you took this 6 months in like solitude. I'm like, I know that my listeners are like, tell me more about this. So I want to spend a little, like, we don't have to spend too much time on here, but I was curious if you could just share a little bit more, like, what did this look like for you in a day-to-day? That must have taken a lot of like allowance and surrender into not having control and not knowing how it's all going to work out, not having all the pieces sorted out. And this is one of the things, I don't know if you have Virgo in your chart at all, but like I'm Virgo, I'm totally that type A, and I've definitely released and surrendered and I can trust into that. But I know a lot of my clients or students that I've had, or just anybody really in my audience, that is one of the things they come to me with the most struggle in is, but how? Like, how can I just like how can I just focus on, like, if I'm not moving forward in my business, if I'm not making this success, if I'm not bringing this money, then I'm not successful, or I'm not moving forward in this world. Everything is like that control, needing to fix it, needing to have the answer. So seeing like 6 months, hey, I'm not making an income, I'm not bringing this in. I'm sure people are like, I feel called to that. I need that. But how? Like, how did you allow yourself that permission, that space, and still survive and live without feeling like I can't get by, or I can't pay my bills, or that scarcity and lack that can kind of come from that space too?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a question that a lot of people, both, in my personal world and in conversations, are really curious about, because they're like, who does that? That's kind of wild. Even when I was working in the mental health world, I took a mental health day. And even then it was like, you took a day for your mental health? Like, that's crazy. And now here I am 6 months, and that's extra wild. So I appreciate you asking that and bringing that forward. So first of all, really practically, I had spent 10 years basically working. So financially I was fine. And I say that as sort of a caveat, because for a lot of people, the how is primarily financial. Back then, I didn't have any passive income products or resources out there. I was just eating into savings for 6 months, recognizing that at the end of that time, I had no idea it would be 6 months. I just thought at the end of this time, I'll either get another job to tide me over, or I'll, have a lot more clarity to step back into the business that I want to create. And in terms of the day-to-day stuff, I had just moved in with my partner back then, and my partner now, and back then we had just moved in together. And it was not a smooth transition, Autumn. Dear everyone out there listening to this, the moving in piece, like, he's amazing, and he's really helped me ease into myself and ease into ease in general, because I'm a Leo, and I'm also just incredibly like hyper driven. I'm a achiever. I'm a Leo. I'm just a go-getter, and especially when I see the capacity for me to do something in a way that really excites me, I'm happy to spend every day 12 hours a day making that happen. And so in moving in with John, who is an amazing human, he really kind of kept me accountable, because I said, I need this time for healing primarily. I had done a lot of work, like I said earlier, in addictions counseling, and I hadn't really fully processed everything that I had heard and experienced and helped other people work through. And because of that, I think I was holding on to a lot of just challenges, right? Like there's, I think you went to a Tony Robbins event last year, a few years ago. And I remember somebody told me one of his maybe 3 questions or 3 statements that he gets people to answer is, the world is, or I am blank, people are blank, and the world is blank. And, obviously fill in your answer where the blank lies. And so my answers around, people are blank and the world is blank were just not where I wanted them to be, right? I needed more stories of hope. I needed more stories of empowerment. And I wanted to surround myself with both those stories and with the people who had those stories. And so during those 6 months, I was really, really careful with the conversations that I had with people. So, my mom, with the work that she does, sometimes she calls me and sometimes work seeps into the conversation. And so I had to be very, very careful and really mindful in telling my family, telling my friends, many of whom are social workers, and telling anyone else that this is where I'm at right now. I can't really emotionally handle topics A, B, and C. And so, I'd really just appreciate if we could steer clear of those really heavy discussions, because this is what happens, right? Like, you're a social worker, you're used to hearing these stories. So people bring them forward to you. It's just like, it's your normal day-to-day conversation. And it takes a toll, right? Like it really does. And so again, step one, boundaries, really clear boundaries. I also just took the first probably 2 months to observe how restless I was. Because like I said, as someone who has worked full-time, multiple jobs at once for 10 years, just being able to sit in stillness and silence and solitude for 6 months, it's not an overnight thing, right? Like it takes so much, again, like experimentation. What does this feel like to just sit here alone and not immediately grab at my phone and try to distract myself? Like, it was just sort of being with myself and feeling that out again. And John was very good in saying, you don't have to wake up when I wake up to go to work and immediately start brainstorming your next project, or immediately start working on this book or this. So it was really beneficial for me, although frustrating as hell, to be constantly called out on those behavioral patterns, right? Like I'm excited about creating something new. And so initially when I took those 6 months, I was like, I need to heal, but also, and perhaps maybe my secret ulterior motive was, I'm going to create this like booming product about mindfulness, about productivity, about my whole experience. And because of that focus, I realized after a while that I was doing myself a disservice because I wasn't fully experiencing the silence, the stillness, the solitude, and everything, like the lessons and the self-realization that comes with those things. Because in my head, I was so focused on, how am I going to share this with people? How am I going to teach this to future clients? And I think that's the case for a lot of entrepreneurs and coaches, especially, right? Like, you kind of step out of your personal life and forget to live your experiences because you're so hyper-focused on sharing them with other people. And so for me, it was constant daily practice of like, okay, I'm just going to learn how to do this for myself, and just like sit and read a book and not think about, okay, I'm going to make a YouTube video. I'm going to make a blog post about this point. That's a great point. And I still catch myself doing that because it's tempting and you do want to share. But I mean, primarily you're a human being. You've got to live your life first, and you've got to live your life fully and then kind of share from the overflow. And back to the day-to-day, I just ended up creating a very intentional routine, because in that 6 months, I didn't want to just sort of fall to the wayside and be chaotic. Like, in my head, I was just like, I'm unemployed. I'm going to be like such a loser. And I just wasn't going to let that happen. And so I just created a really simple routine for my day. Things like, making breakfast, doing some yoga in the morning, having a cup of tea while I read a book. And then throughout the day, through different conversations, through a lot of journaling and a lot of reading, then it was like, okay, I'm seeing this thought pattern, or these beliefs come up, or this, pattern of behavior that I'm reacting to that I want to dive into a little bit further and unpack. And a big part of why I did that, why I started unpacking those things was the catalyst for that was actually a podcast episode. The podcast is called On Being with Krista Tippett, and the episode was with John O'Donohue, who I had never heard of before. But I came across this podcast, and he was he's passed now, but he was a theologian, a pastor, a poet, and just has the most like soft lyrical way of explaining things that are so relevant to the modern world. And it's all about, inner beauty and really getting to know like the 7 thoughts that you're so deeply connected to and living through that you don't even notice, the other thoughts that you could be bringing into your life. So I started really listening to that, and that was resonating with me. And then he said something about how we need to focus less on what we do and more of who we want to be. And I'd heard that, sort of in different ways over the years and really brushed it off. But just because perhaps of the space that I was in, and, I was feeling pretty burnt out from being so focused on what I want to do next, I think I was open to the message. And we hear it a lot, right, as coaches and as entrepreneurs of you've got to be the person that other people want to invest in. Mm-hmm. Like that's got to be a high priority for you, if not at the top. And I fully agree with that. And I also believe that you need to be the person you want to be simply because you deserve that. And it's just for you, right? Like as a social worker, as a social worker, I'd heard so much of you need to take care of yourself so that you can serve other people. It's always like other people were still at the forefront. And of course it's important to serve other people. And I believe a major part of why I'm here. But I really wanted to focus on just for me, I just want to be good to myself because I deserve that. And I hadn't been able to come to that point when I was immersed in, the worlds of entrepreneurship as a working for the productivity strategy or strategist. And I wasn't quite able to fully grasp that when I was counseling. And so just kind of shutting down the other areas of my life professionally anyways, I was able to realize, okay, yeah, I do deserve to just feel good and to be good to myself, because really it's at the end of the day, like you've got you and you're walking around this life and this earth, and it's always going to be you and yourself. And so that was really the focus of those 6 months. But anyway, as a whole summary to that entire thing, just be so aware that transition was not easy. Like it didn't come naturally, just as most transitions don't. It just takes like so much practice and discipline and tears and anger. And, like there's a lot of gunk that we hold on to, whether it's because of work, whether it's because of like childhood, whether just all kinds of things that we store in our minds and in our bodies. And so to unpack that, even just one thing, even just to identify one thing, it takes time. And so I would just encourage anyone, whether you're interested in taking, a day to yourself or 6 months, like just try to be so compassionate with yourself and see yourself as a human, and try to observe yourself as someone who you're trying to get to know. Because there are so many facets of us that we have still, to meet, really.
Yeah. So when you went through this 6 months then, and you allowed yourself to come back and feel really mindful and feel really intentional and feel like, okay, I've taken the time that I've needed and the space that I've needed for myself and for my journey and for my growth, and you started to reintegrate back into entrepreneurship, is this where you started to pull like the productivity back in a way that felt aligned and good for you?
Yes. And so like the mindfulness piece was a major part of like the personal healing that I had to do over the course of those 6 months and continually, just because of, again, like the stories that I've heard and just the things that life has brought into my life. And once I felt like sort of a full person again and more centered and aligned and back to myself, then it was like, okay, I've healed that bit. I've recognizing obviously there's ongoing work to do, but I've come back to myself in that sense. And I'm still feeling like incredibly ambitious and driven and trying to figure out how to go about that sort of side of myself, but with the mindfulness and with great intention. And a big part of what I learned over those 6 months, again, is just like observing how restless I was. And so I started dissecting productivity a little bit more, but from a different standpoint, right? Of we are so keen to do everything, right? Like there are countless social media platforms that we're told to be incredibly active on in order to 5 or 10x your business and your traffic. And I've just felt professionally and like in terms of building a business that I was like being stretched in so many different directions. And so I started looking into, okay, what does it actually mean to be productive? And, you see those images on Facebook or on Pinterest, wherever, that it says hustle and then there's a line crossing through and it says align underneath. And so I'm glad there's becoming more and more of a dialogue around that and what it looks like to hustle or what it looks like to be in alignment and really be productive. And so for me, I thought I don't want to try to do everything and feel like it's all stacking up around me and I'm not actually doing what I want to do with my time and with my energy and with my resources and the ways that I can give. And so it was reframing productivity from a mindful standpoint of doing the right things and really like decluttering so that you have the mental space, the mental RAM to do the right things incredibly effectively, and then either outsource or sort of disregard the rest.
I feel like this is the way, because there's a lot of talk through like this, like through spirituality, right? About masculine and feminine and these two different energies. And there's so many like fuck the hustle or fuck the masculine energy. And there's a lot of like, but I think like the way that you're sharing this is really powerful, because what it's saying is that you're utilizing productivity to rein in the feminine. Like you're allowing that to almost, or not rein in the feminine, but you're allowing the productivity to allow the feminine to exist. Like you're allowing that, the mindfulness, the change, the balance, the flow, like allowing that space to fit in with the productivity. And I think that's really important. Like I just, people don't really talk about that much.
Right.
You say like the masculine, like do the work. But I think, again, utilizing that verbiage around productivity is powerful, because there's nothing wrong with work ethic. There's nothing wrong with showing up and doing your part. Like that's important. It's important to be productive, but it's in the way that you're explaining it, which is so powerful. I know, because this is something that you teach your clients on.
Right.
This is something that you talk a lot about. Do you have like hacks or tips or some other tangible ways that somebody can look at what isn't maybe working in their life or start to increase their productivity in their business while keeping mindfulness as a priority too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to like the masculine and feminine, we all have both types of energies running through us, right? Like we are both. And so I do agree with you that you often see both sides of the spectrum being, or both sides of the extreme. And I'm so passionate about integrating the two, because as a person, that's how I operate. I feel like I have both types of energy at nearly an equal level. And so there are a lot of people perhaps who feel the same way. And this is a great way to discuss how they're not separate entities. They do integrate. And when they integrate, you can like catapult your business in fascinating ways. And so the first way that I would that I would sort of decipher how you can be more productive while also being more mindful is to get really clear on your definition of productivity. And so for productivity, again, it's like it's doing the right things incredibly well and efficiently. So there's like the 80-20 rule that I don't know, for those who aren't familiar, it's basically just that 80% of your output generally is yielding 20% of your returns, right? So if, yeah, that's right. No, sorry, the other way around. 20% of your output is yielding 80% of the returns.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I was like, that's not right at all.
I think I said that the other day. I'm not even kidding you. And I think I said it the exact same way that you did. And I was like, wait, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah, no. If it were the other way, you're doing really well. That's great. But if only 20% of what you're doing is creating profit in your business, or let's say if 20% of what you're doing in the gym is giving you 80% of your muscle mass, then why are you bothering with the other 80%, right? Like, focus really intently, again, intently on the 20% and invest your time and energy there, and then your results will grow as a result, right? And so it starts with that, and with just honing in on what are you doing that is actually yielding results, that is, maybe that's transforming your body if it's fitness in the gym, or that's transforming your clients if you're working as a coach. And then what are you going to do with the other 80%? Like, is it necessary? Is it something that someone else can do? How is it best for you to spend your time and energy? And I really do think that asking those questions and exploring them is the first step in marrying the masculine and feminine energy, or the mindfulness and productivity approaches, because that is how you establish your priorities, right? That's how you take steps forward into where do I want to invest my time, my resources, and myself. And if you're not doing that, then you're sort of just floundering around, like juggling too many things. And that was certainly how I felt before taking those 6 months of nothingness and clarity, and realizing where I need to realign myself and reinvest in certain areas. Another sort of exercise or practice that I'll do with clients, keeping in mind that I work with people who are interested in both mindfulness and productivity in professional senses and in personal senses. So my work isn't just how can I use this in order to grow my business. It's also, for my personal health or for my relationships. So there's a broader scope in terms of what it's utilized for. So I'll use what I call the wellness wheel. And basically it goes through, it's a self-assessment of different aspects of your life. Mm-hmm. Different aspects of your life, so that you can see where you're currently investing your time and energy, where you'd like to, and where you'd like to invest your time and energy. Because if you don't know where you want to invest that time and energy, you're sort of stuck in terms of how you're making your decisions, right? You're going to be a lot more reactive. And this is something that I've just outlined, that I've created in the book that I've published last month now, which is Self-Care at Work. And the reason for that title and the reason for what's in the book is because it is a marriage of both of those things, of the self-care, the mindfulness piece, and the work, the productivity, the professionalism. Because if you lack the self-care and the self-awareness and the intention, then your work is really exclusively reactive. And if your work is reactive, then you're responding to what else is already in the market. You're not really providing what is authentic to you and what's unique to you. And you're sort of trying to fit into the culture rather than add to it, right? And so when you blend mindfulness and productivity, then you actually create a unique addition to the marketplace, to your niche, to the conversation. And that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I'm geared towards helping other people to do, is not only to do what's important to them, but to do it in a way that really only they can do.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing so much beautiful tips and so much tangible things that everybody could ask themselves or sit with and assess. Like, I'm sure, because I'm even doing it myself as I'm listening to you speak. So anybody that's listening and has this playing in their car, or it's on at work, or they're just doing their stuff as they're getting ready for their week, this is a beautiful opportunity for you to assess why you're doing what you're doing and why you are where you are, and how you can allow yourself to be more intentional and allow yourself to focus on the things that are potently giving you success and momentum and happiness and all the things in your life that are actually moving you forward. It doesn't have to be all the things. It gets to be 20% of what you're working on to give those 80% results. I love that. That's so beautiful. There's one other kind of question that I had that was sitting here because I'm kind of nosy.
Sure.
I'm nosy. So self-care is a big thing for you.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing that you love talking about. And I know that there's so many definitions around self-care. So that's totally cool. Take like whatever definition, anybody has as you're listening, let it be that. But I'm curious what like your go-to in your own personal routine has been for self-care lately.
Yes. I love this question. I love this question. And I also love answering it at different times in the year, because for me, it really does shift, right? Like it does fluctuate. And one thing that I'll say to preface is my definition of self-care is ridiculously simple. It's just that self-care is a meaningful self-investment. That's it.
I love that.
And so that just acknowledges that it can look differently.
Yeah.
It can look different for different people, or at different times of day or different times of year. Like for me, maybe during that 6-month period, that followed a move. I left the city where I was renting this little apartment with just a little bathroom and a little shower. And now I'm in a pretty small cabin, but I've got a big clawfoot tub. And so when I moved here, I'm totally aware that there's this vision or this visual online, which I won't get into. I'm not a big fan, but a lot of people see self-care as, a white girl in a bubble bath, because we see these beautiful stock images. Yeah. And okay, so I just want to say, when I moved here to this cabin, I had my first bubble bath in probably like a decade. And to me, the reason why that was self-care was because like your language, I was allowing myself to indulge, like to actually physically relax my body and to just lay there and do my best not to think about work, not to think about things I want to write or create or do. I was just like so present in how my body feels in these bubbles. So that can be self-care, right? Because how is that a self-investment? Well, you're allowing yourself to relax. There's a number of ways. But self-care can also be, like being financially responsible and doing your taxes. Like that's investing in your future. And
I love that.
Yeah. And so regularly though, I mean, I'm not like a huge bubble bath person, but regularly, something that's been a pretty impactful practice has been really intentionally lessening my phone and internet use. And so when I start my day, I always start with like maybe 2 to 5 minutes of yoga, like nothing extravagant, nothing too long. And then I'll make breakfast, I'll sit and have a cup of tea and read. And that's just become kind of my morning routine. And then I won't turn on my computer until I know exactly what I'm going to use it for that day. Mm-hmm. And I do that through, I have like different intentions or sort of themes for the day. That's something that I use, so that when I wake up on Tuesday morning, like today, I know that Tuesday is my day for writing. So I'm working on blog posts and newsletters, or Wednesday is, network, or just when every day has a focus, then I have, again, more mental space to be invested in what I'm doing that day. And after that, so I turn on my computer only once I have a dedicated use for it, right? Because otherwise it's scrolling, I used to be really bad for this. It's taking all kinds of online courses that pop up, like free webinars, because you're trying to learn other people's formulas and tactics, and tempting. And absolutely, you can tell yourself that these are essential. But if you're consuming more than you're producing, then it's time to check in with yourself there.
Yes.
Right? That's a big
Beautiful.
one. Yeah. I'm just like not sleeping with my phone by my bed, using an actual alarm, or using like an old iPhone 4 that has no apps on it because it's so outdated as my alarm, so that I'm not, so that I'm not really that active on social media in terms of consuming before bed or when I wake up. So just really being a bit more disciplined in terms of the way that I use social media has been a huge one, because it can affect people in different ways, right? And especially for me, when those targeted ads are really rooted in should, like entrepreneurs telling me you should do this is going to grow your business, this and this and that. And it's all so enticing and valid, right? Like some amazing products and things come up. But when I notice my stress levels are through the roof in correlation with my phone use levels, then it's like, okay, how is this actually impacting me? And how do I want to use this as a tool rather than feeling like it's just my default?
Got you. That's beautiful. Yeah. What a powerful reminder. Like in this season, I think as fall is coming, as we're like sitting into like winter and we're getting into like those cozy vibes, like it's important to allow yourself to like come back. I mean, gosh, the Libra season was so much in relationships, which I felt. And I think it's just coming back to like set those intentions, ground down, allow yourself to really assess what are you here to do? What do you desire? What do you want? What do you want to feel? What do you want to experience more of? And feel free to go inside and allow yourself to create the space to actually hear what you need and what you want. And it's never, oh my gosh, we're all human. So before you know it, sometimes like you're sitting here on your phone scrolling and you totally didn't realize like your subconscious patterning and routines, like you just were doing it and your fingers are like scrolling. You're like, I didn't even realize I was holding my phone. I thought I lost it.
Totally.
So it's good to have this reminder, no matter where you're at, to check in. Like how often am I opening up my computer right now without an intention behind it? How often am I opening up my phone and scrolling without thinking about why I'm actually on here? Am I on here to finish emails and messages? Am I on here to post my content to social media? Am I on here to create a live video? Am I on here to serve my audience? Am I on here like to check back in with my family, make a phone call? Like, what are you doing? And just, you don't, it's just a beautiful reminder. We all need that. Like we all fucking need that in our lives, because we get caught up in the comparison and this person's doing that person. And so like you gotta, like you keep going and trying to feel that thing. And really every single time it's just allowing yourself to be present and be with your family and be with yourself and be in silence and stillness and play, where you really find the things that you wanted to feel when you really open up your phone to begin with. So
yeah, absolutely. And even just like with that, we do have those defaults, right? So just being really mindful that if you're trying to, let's say, lessen your screen time, like just start by observing that pattern and without judgment. Like you really don't have to beat yourself up every time you are tempted to pick up your phone, because they're designed to be addictive and we're programmed in a certain way that we have behavioral defaults, right? So just like practice being gentle with yourself and like, oh, I did it again. Haha. Like it's a bit of an experiment, isn't it? You're getting to know yourself, especially if you're trying to make a change in your life and your thoughts and your behaviors. It takes time. It's tough. Like just remember that you're human and give yourself some grace and give yourself that compassion and try to laugh it off. Like we're only human. It's just life. We're just figuring out as we go.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. Yeah, like be easy on yourself. Like you don't have to be so hard. It's okay. Nobody was given a rule book and you were missing out on it and like you fucked up. Like you can't fuck it up.
No.
It's okay. Like give yourself grace. It's going to be okay. You're going to wake up tomorrow. Everything's going to be fine. You know, we can always maneuver and tweak and fix. Like it's all good.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Okay. Well, the last thing that I usually ask my guests before we hop off is I always create a space to honor a celebration and honor where you're at and honor something that you're really excited about or something that you're really proud about or something that you created or launched or focusing on. So what are you celebrating right now?
Oh, I love this question because taking time to celebrate my progress and my strengths is definitely one of my focuses for the rest of this year. So I appreciate that space. So sun on my face. As of only last week, actually, I published my first book.
Holy shit, yeah.
It's something that's been on, as a kid, I was like, I want to write, I want to publish a book. And nowadays, especially with Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, it's totally possible. And even without it. So I published my first book. It's called Self-Care at Work, How to Reduce Stress, Boost Productivity, and Do More of What Matters. And it's available. It's out there. It's in the world. And that's scary and awesome and like everything all at once. So I am taking this moment and many moments before and after this moment to celebrate that I did that thing. And now you can read it and you can tell me what you think and share it with people who would benefit from reducing stress and boosting productivity and learning really practical steps toward taking better care of yourself in a way that serves both your work and yourself. So you can check that out on Amazon or on my website at Melissa Steginus, STEGINUS.com.
That is fucking epic. Yes. You guys go buy her book, read it, tag her in it when you get it. So then she sees it and can celebrate you too for making that decision and choice in your life and for your health and for your better self-care. So, oh my gosh, this episode was full of so many juicy nuggets. Thank you for sharing your time and your energy and all of your love and brilliance and expertise with us. Where can our listeners find you?
Well, I am probably the easiest sort of umbrella of everything is my website, melissasteginus.com. Of course, I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, kind of here and there. I try not to do too much of everything because everything is out there. But again, just Melissa Steginus on all social media platforms. You can find me there. And I'm really approachable and friendly and nice. So, reach out and let's chat.
She so is, you guys. She so is. It's like sitting here chatting right now with like a BFF. So yay. Oh, I love those types of relationships and connections. Like those are the easiest conversations to have when it just feels super effortless. So again, thank you so much for being here. I'm just feeling so lit up and so excited to continue on this rest of the day. And I'm just so grateful to have been able to share space with you and to get to know you. So again, thank you so much for being here. I hope that you guys love this episode and see you in the next one. Bye.